How did you enter this crazy world of showbiz in the first place before becoming a lawyer?
Well, that's a very good question. In 1995, in Oklahoma City, I went to the mall looking for a Mother's Day gift, and of course, I was in high school drama, and I did competitive speech, and I enjoyed all that, and I was successful at it. But being in Oklahoma, you don't have a lot of opportunities to be discovered or really participate in show business. So I'm walking through the mall, and I saw that there was a stand-up audition for a local television station's kids club, television program. And so I literally just walked up cold to this audition, and I read a few lines, or I did a couple of things at this particular mall, while in the process of looking for a Mother's Day gift, completely impromptu. And they ended up giving me a second audition, and eventually I got the job as a local kids club personality here in Oklahoma City, which of course is not a big market, but nevertheless, I got to pretty much play myself. And over the course of about 2 years, I introduced the cartoons. I hosted a 30-minute program once, and I went and made appearances and signed autographs. I mean, that's basically what the job was. Well, as a result of that job, I was able to generate a talent videotape of some of the work that I'd done here that I had kind of written myself, and it was all unscripted. And I decided, that nothing else was going to happen for me in show business. I was just going to continue to do this for as long as it lasted. Well, I was going to college at the time, and I was a marketing major. And my professor at that time said that he gave us a project to market ourselves to a company that we would like to work for. And of course, his assignment did not require that we actually submit any sort of materials to this company that we wanted to work for, but he just wanted us to do it and turn it in as an assignment. Well, I took it to the next level, and I called New York City, and I asked for the casting department for Nickelodeon, and I got the name of a person that worked there at the time. That's important. You want to definitely get somebody's name that you can make contact with and develop a relationship with. And so I got the name of Melissa Chusid, who was at that time working in their casting department in New York City. Of course, she didn't know me from Adam. The reason why I ever had the blessing and the opportunity to go down to Florida and work at Nickelodeon. But anyway, and the next time I contacted her, I sent her a couple of other gag items. Again, each package got bigger and bigger. And eventually I sent a full-size, foam core cardboard cutout of myself to her up at New York City, and that one got me an audition. So anyway, long story, very long already. She got me an audition, and to my knowledge, I'm the only talent that they've hired, at least up until that point. This is something that Melissa, if I recall, had told me. I was the only talent that they had hired that did not have an agent going in. So kind of broke a mold there. I don't know if they've done it since. Probably not, because I wasn't the most talented. Certainly, I wasn't the best looking and the most talented person they'd ever hired. But nevertheless, that's how I got down to Florida and got to participate in You're On and figure it out.
So you moved down to Florida, and then maybe like you're staying there, testing out the pilot, and going down to film for You're On at Nickelodeon Studios. What was your first impression of the place when you got there?
Oh my gosh, man! I tell people this to this day. I had worked in local television, and it was night and day. And this isn't to disparage anybody that I'd worked with here in Oklahoma City, but I will say that the consummate professionals that were at Nickelodeon, you can't say enough good things about the people that were there. Sometimes the local television market can be kind of cutthroat, and sometimes people can be a little bit abrasive with you, and maybe even not real supportive of you. That was the impression that I got kind of working in local television. The competition can be somewhat fierce, if you can believe that, in kids club work. But it just didn't seem like it was the most comfortable environment to work in. But when I got to Nickelodeon, man, everybody was just so polite and kind and supportive and encouraging. And, of course, just getting down there and heck, just rolling onto Universal Studios lot. Oh, my gosh, that was a dream come true. So, and I'd grown up watching Nickelodeon. I'd watched You Can't Do That on television, and, of course, everybody's favorite, Double Dare. I'd watch programs like that growing up, and so it was like a dream come true. I felt like it didn't even feel like it was real. you know. And then, of course, I get to brag. You know, I get to tell people that I've been slimed with actual Nickelodeon slime. I mean, how cool is that? I've told my kids that, and now to this day, they get to watch. You know, they get to watch the videos.
You were aware of Phil Moore when you first met him?
Man, the guy's just electric. He's full of energy, and it's almost like it never gets shut off. He doesn't seem to have a different speed. And I'll tell you another thing about Phil. And again, this is a testament to the overall treatment that I got when I was at Nickelodeon. Excuse me. Phil is 100% genuine.
Going to You're On, do you mind telling what was a typical day like filming there at the studio and to prepare for the show?
Sure. Actually, you know, one of the best parts of, and this is silly to say, but one of the best parts of working on You're On was that we only worked 3 days a week at that time. We didn't work, if I recall, we didn't work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but we worked on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Oh. And so during those 3 days, we'd go out and we'd spend probably, from recollection, we'd spend 10 to 12 hours out on location somewhere. And if you remember the show well enough, and you've probably seen it more recently than I have, we'd go out to places like you know, SeaWorld or Wet and Wild or to a mall or to wherever, and we'd set up our camera work and in our hidden locations to capture some of the people and their reactions. And you know, of course, some of that time spent was traveling. Not everything that we shot for that show was in Orlando, but it would have been in some of the suburban areas that were surrounding Orlando. Excuse me. Like, for example, I think Sanford is fairly close. There was some shooting that went on over there, and so we drive maybe sometimes a half an hour outside of the Orlando area to capture some folks in their natural habitat, so to speak. And an average day was, I wouldn't say it was grueling, but I mean, we stayed on task. I mean, time is money. You've got a staff to pay for, and so we'd get from one place to the next, and we'd shoot, and there wouldn't be a lot of opportunity to reshoot things. So, you know, some of those things that we would have shot probably weren't, you know, perfect cuts, but we just, you know, we moved from one project to the next pretty quickly.
Oh, okay. So basically, this was really live programming. So is what you're.
You could say that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you could definitely say that in part. I mean, like in studio with Phil, I only had the opportunity to work with Phil in studio one time. Everything that we shot in the field was shot prior to Phil's video, and so Phil's video, I want to say, if I recall correctly, would have been shot several months after both Vivienne and myself had finished what we were doing. And so, you know, we did get invited back for the final episode, which is funny because I've never seen the final episode. I need to look for that. I've never seen the video of the final episode that I can recall. But both Vivienne and myself got invited back to the studio, and it kind of tied it all together. It made it look like we were all kind of working together for that 2 or 3 month period. The daily routine would be they'd give me the sets or the sequences that we were to shoot that day, and I do my best to memorize. You know, like, for example, on You're On, the contestants were to complete 3 tasks within a certain amount of time. So before I go on camera, I'd have to remember those tasks in a certain order, and I had a very limited amount of time to deliver those tasks. And there were no cue cards, there were no notes. So for that day, I would try to remember each of those 3 tasks for each of the 3 or 4 episodes that we were shooting that day, or 2 or 3 episodes or whatever. Sometimes I tripped up. I had a tendency to talk a little too fast.
I remember, like, you said you only worked with Phil, like, once in the studio, and then Vivienne, you guys were doing separate fields. So, you know, the studio, of course, had the studio tour where you guests could see you up front. So would you say with that last episode was the first time you got to see the tour coming by and visitors from that glass window up above? Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. And I remember walking around the park and having people recognize me, and you know, the whole just that admiration they had, the folks that were at the park and the visitors to the studio, the admiration they had for the talent there. Everybody was so kind and gracious and respectful, and it was their opportunity as fans to have a personal connection with folks that they got to see from around the world, right? I mean, Universal Studios is a repository for fans from around the world to come to and pay respect to the folks that they watch on television, to get to meet some of those folks. That was something that was unique about Orlando, is that studio represented kind of a microcosm of where people could travel to, and any day of the week, they'd have the opportunity to meet somebody that they had spent so much time with at the house, right? Through the use of the television or I guess now the internet. I don't think about that. We didn't have the internet as prevalent then, which is crazy to say. It was there. It just wasn't prevalent. Nickelodeon Studios, seeing the fans up in the window, seeing the live studio audience, you could just get, there was this energy, there was this energy that was present that was kind of difficult to describe of just this mutual admiration, the fans for the talent and the actors and the hosts and vice versa, those folks and their appreciation for the fans.
Yeah, I mean, just that whole park and that whole studio section, it was such easy access to see your favorite stars up close and personal, and I feel like you can't find it anywhere else these days. You're on cancellation because it only lasted one season, and so many people feel that way. Even Phil Moore, he felt like, Nickelodeon was starting to move away from the game show formats in the late 90s and stuff. Did you feel like the cancellation of You're On was affected by that because Nickelodeon was moving in a different direction?
I would agree with that. I think that's probably consistent. If you look across the board, the only other game show that I can remember them putting a lot of emphasis in after that was Double Dare 2000.
Yeah, and that wasn't really successful too.
No, it wasn't, and I want to say Figure It Out. Of course, Figure It Out, by the time I got involved in Figure It Out, it had already run, I'd say, through its better years from a rating standpoint. It already, like any show, when it's run its course, they'll try to manipulate it in such a way to hopefully generate more attention to it. And so when I joined the program, it was Figure It Out Family Style, and then they changed it again, I think, even after that, and created Figure It Out, Wild Style, which I think involved animal talents or something like that. Yeah. And so what it's not uncommon in the show business practice, I guess, that they'll take a concept and try to manipulate it just a little bit so that way that'll breathe new life into the concept. And it worked. I think it worked for a short time. But so right around the time You're On would have been shot, they were already beginning to tinker with the Figure It Out concept. And as a result of that, you could kind of tell that, that even that show was on its way down. It had already plateaued. So I think what Phil has to say about that would be right.
Yeah, totally. I agree the same way. But, to end You're On a good note, the last episode that you don't remember, because I remember you, Vivian, Phil got into a food fight and with Phil Moore's son, and you guys dumped all of this crazy edible products like mud, water, food, all of you could think of. Do you remember that food fight from that last episode?
I do remember that. I remember, now that you mention it, I want to say there was like a kiddie pool or something.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
I want to say we tried to, I think there was some effort to try to, consolidate the spillage and try to keep the studio floor clean. Well, I don't think it worked, but I do remember there being a kiddie pool, and I can tell you another thing, and I'd forgotten about it until you said that. I'm pretty sure I probably pulled my hamstring in that particular exchange because the floor got real slippery, and we all started kind of goofing off, and although I didn't express any pain because, come on, I'm on TV in front of a live studio audience, and I'm getting to play and goof off, forget about the pain. I'm not worried about that, but I'm almost 100% sure that I fell or I tweaked my leg in such a way that I pulled a hamstring during that particular set.
What I liked about You're On is like you got to go to all these different places around Orlando, like the mall, and I feel like the city is such a quaint, quiet city with lively entertainment. It's not as big as LA and New York, but it felt more impersonal, and you got to see so many shopping districts and all of that. Would you say that was one of the good things about living and working in Orlando for you?
Oh, are you kidding? I loved Orlando. I got to travel to Orlando, and I'm driving by places that, you see on television, and of course, back in those days, I'm pretty sure Shaq was still there.
Yeah.
Sure, Orlando was terrific, and it was a very clean city. I liked the way it was set up, but no, I really enjoyed Orlando thoroughly. Very exciting town, and there's just tons of stuff to do everywhere you go.
I know we talked about Figure It Out a little bit, but going back to it, how was it to be on that show? Because, you're in the studio and you're not as active as you were on You're On. You're not as active and walking around the park and going to other places. You're just sitting there waiting to be slimed, basically, which is the best part.
Right. No, that, to me, between the two experiences, of course they were completely different experiences because, obviously There are those folks that like to do on-camera work, and there are those folks that like to do live studio audience work or theater work, right? They want to see that reaction by the crowd. I guess you might say that I kind of fall back on, or would prefer having a live audience to kind of feed off of and gather that energy from. So between the two opportunities, I preferred being in studio because, again, I mean, there's just this energy that you can't replicate. It's just like, I won't equate it to walking out on a football field in front of 70,000 fans. I won't do that because it's not the same as that. I've never done that. But I can imagine what that must feel like when you come out onto a studio and there's, 1,000 or 500 or a few hundred fans, and they're making noise and they're clapping their hands and they're laughing out loud all in unison. And it may be because it's something you said or you did that caused that reaction. It's euphoric. And so when I got to figure it out and be a part of that, when Danny slings his hair back and gets slime on everybody that's sitting behind him, and I'm sitting 2 chairs down from that, when we're sticking marshmallows up our nose and making the kids laugh and goofing off on stage or in studio, you can't replicate that.
So the memory of Nickelodeon is always going to be implanted in your brain, basically.
Oh, there is no doubt. I mean, unfortunately, such a short-lived opportunity and period in my life had such a long-term effect.
All right. What is it like to get slimed, basically? Please tell.
Okay, well, that's a good question. Interestingly enough, I'd only been familiar with the you can't do that on television recipe for slime. I don't know if you've ever heard about this, but there are a few different recipes.
Oh yeah, there are.
Okay, well, yeah, you can't do that on television recipe was the one that I'd always expected and understood to be the recipe for slime, and that was oatmeal and I think applesauce.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the recipe that they used on Figure It Out was vanilla pudding with green food coloring in it, and it was kind of diluted, so it would run a little bit thinner, and so it wouldn't be bad. You would taste it and you'd lick it off your lips, and it would just be like eating dessert, right? So the slime tasted good. Mm-hmm. Well, it was also very, very cold, and so because it was chilled, it was kept in a refrigerated state. And so when we were sitting on the stage, and you'd get slimed, you'd get doused with this cold bottle or this cold, outflow of goo, and then it would absorb into your clothes, and so you'd literally be sitting in a refrigerated, or I should say air-conditioned studio covered in wet coldness. And so, yeah, you'd start to get a little bit chilly. And the second part of it, that was even more interesting, was that it would begin to harden. So let's say you got slimed early in an episode, that slime would begin to harden and crust, like, for example, on your face or in your hair, and it sometimes would make it difficult to close and open your eyes, or things of that nature I remember specifically. So yeah, it would crust. And it was funny because I'd go back to my dressing room and you'd just see globs and footprints of slime all the way down the hallway and into your dressing room, where you could then shower and get a new jumpsuit.
I could see that.
But I loved being slimed. I didn't like any of the episodes that I participated in where I didn't get slimed. And I think it's abundantly clear in watching the shows that all of the all of the panelists were very eager to get slimed. Now, maybe Lori Beth and Danny, maybe not so much because they had been slimed probably 1,000 times by that point. But boy, I was just hungry for it. And fortunately, the staff there at Figure It Out were kind enough to accommodate me on a number of occasions.
I'm glad that you said that because I always wonder if all the panelists enjoyed getting slimed from every episode. So there you go.
I'm gonna speculate that Lori Beth probably grew a little bit irritated by it. Yeah. But again, Lori Beth sat in that chair a good deal number of times more than I did. So, and not to mention she had longer hair. So I can only venture to guess that probably became somewhat burdensome to try to clean that hair in between episodes.
Yeah, totally. And one of the best episodes that you were in, the four of you guys, was it was funny because one of the clues was this birthday cake, and of course the kids telling us, you know what I'm talking about, huh? You remember, huh?
I remember that. I do remember that episode. Yeah.
Yes, and then Lori Beth smashes the cake in front of Danny, and then all of a sudden you guys did the same thing, and then it was a big food fight. So yeah, I loved it.
I was so disappointed. If you watch that episode, and again, this is for a subtle detail, I knew that Lori Beth and Amanda did a pretty good job nailing Danny in the face.
Yeah.
And Danny was so much fun to pick on. And then I had a fresh cake that hadn't been used yet, and so I stood up and began to walk over there, and I was going to be the exclamation point.
Yeah.
They slipped off the board and fell on the floor, and so I threw a fit. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I blew it.
Yeah.
I blew that great opportunity to just really zing him. But yeah. That was the thing about all of those guys. The Orlando cast was more of a local kind of flavor for talent.
Right.
But nonetheless, they did, a lot of those folks went on to bigger and better things. But nonetheless, when you work with folks in show business, you expect that there's going to be this cutthroat kind of competition, this competitive streak with everybody, and that everybody's out to get everybody else, and that there's only so many jobs out there, and that you can't be friends with these people. Well, I didn't get that sense at all from Lori Beth, Danny, or Amanda. They were all wonderfully accommodating, very friendly, even though they didn't know who I was, especially considering that my chair was always the rotating chair. Yeah. So why would you get to know the person sitting in the fourth seat if they're only going to be here for a couple of weeks or less? Well, they did. They were very kind and spent time. I remember I went out with Lori Beth after hours. I think we went and, I can't remember what we did. We went and had dinner or something. Of course, Danny and I went around the park, and I hung around with him and his siblings, and I think his mom. Amanda Bynes, she was very young at that time. I think she was probably 10 or 12, if I were to guess. And her mom was there, and boy, she was super terrific and very, very sweet. Just very much a family atmosphere, and very much different than what I had expected.
You're On, it's been so many years later, but how do you feel knowing that, this show and Figure It Out, all these other 90s Nickelodeon shows have made such a positive impact on fans and is still loved today? How does that make you feel?
Oh, my goodness. Grateful, humble. It's actually, think about that. Okay, so I was in drama in high school, and I had the opportunity to compete with other people in drama events. And, we were all kind of chasing after the same thing. And we were all trying to get that opportunity where we could be discovered or we could make it into the big time. That was kind of our thing. And although I didn't win an Oscar or I didn't win a Tony, I didn't get to the point in my career where my name was in credits at the end of a movie. I didn't get that far. That wasn't my plan. That wasn't in the plan or the stars for me. But what was in the stars for me was that short opportunity to work at a place like that and to see firsthand just the genuine enthusiasm that people had. Like I said, it was very humbling to get your email. Very humbling. That was pretty cool. I don't know you from Adam, right? I've never met you before, and yet you already feel like you've got a rapport with me just based upon that short time that I had either on your television or on your computer screen, whatever. And again, even in that, just a limited role because Bill and Vivienne had a big part too. So, wow, gosh, only so few people on the earth get that opportunity to have an influence on others in that way. And I was fortunate enough, although in a very small capacity, fortunate enough to get a taste of it. And so it makes me feel great.
Yeah, it reminds us of a time when television as a whole was at its peak, and television, I feel like, especially children's television, was really good. So that's why we relate to it so much, and that's why we think fondly of you guys. And I think Nickelodeon at the time, which is a completely different network now, I think was relatable a lot more to kids, and they spoke to kids, and that's why we love it so much. So the studio, like you said, it's been closed for 11 years now, and it's missed by so many people. Would you like to see it come back Nickelodeon Studios one day?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I'd put my kids and myself on a plane. My wife, we'd all travel down to Orlando immediately and be some of the first folks to go through the tour, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so. I feel like the new generation they would get a kick out of it as well. Like,
Again, they'd have the opportunity to, that again would become a destination point for young talent to come and make appearances and be on studio or in studio and meet fans and interact with them. And so you can't go wrong whenever you create a place for people to travel to interact with their idols and some of the folks that they follow.
definitely. And finally, the last question is, what do you think made Nick Studios Florida so great and special?
That's an interesting question. I would say accessibility. It was an accessible place. It was very colorful. It's funny, there's been times in the past that I've traveled. I've just traveled to various places around the country, and I remember specifically when I was looking for a college to attend. And I remember one particular college campus just being more colorful and vibrant and welcoming. And I remember another college campus not being so much so. And that guided my decision as to where I would ultimately go to college. Similarly, Nickelodeon was just a very bright, colorful, positive, and uplifting place. It almost seemed like it was too good to be true, like it was synthetic, it was fake, and it just wasn't that way. I mean, as soon as I got off the plane and started to interact with people that were there at the studio and the fans and the production crew and the other folks on stage, all of those things were confirmed. I mean, it was just a bright, cheerful, and enlightening and encouraging place. And so, just accessibility. It was accessible. It was like finally finding the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. There was a great deal of positive energy.
Yeah, I mean, it was a place where I think the kids were the winners because it was nicknamed the world's first headquarters for kids. And I know when I visited there, I was astounded by it. I forgot to mention that I went there in 1994, but when I went there, I was astounded by the place. And it, like you said, it was so colorful and vibrant. And it was basically the place where kids would win and so much talent. And that's why I wanted to do this project just to see how much this place has made an impact and is much needed for this type of community today.
I agree, 100%. You can't go wrong whenever you bring something positive into the world. I mean, you can't ever go wrong with that. We need more of that.
Oh yeah.
We need more of that.
Oh yeah, totally. And Travis, I have to thank you for talking to me today. It was quite astounding.
Hey, well, listen, Bilal, thank you for contacting me. It was the highlight of my week.
Oh, no problem at all. All right, thank you, Travis. Have a nice day. I'll talk to you later, okay?
You bet. Good luck.
All right, thanks. Bye.